My name is John Passfield, and the title of this reading will be John and Dickens, Video 11, Dickens's Canadian Novel, Part 1. So here is my novella, John and Dickens, A Christmas Mystery. I'll just adjust it so you can see the drawing, which is John in a room with Charles Dickens, the 1843 Charles Dickens, the Charles Dickens who was about to write A Christmas Carol, surrounded by characters who are from his earlier novels, Oliver Twist and so on, but not from A Christmas Carol. He's having some problems, as you'll see. Here's the summary on the back of the book. Writer John Passfield leaves his home, buys a coffee, and drives down to the shores of Lake Erie to perform a Christmas ritual, strolling along the beach at Port Maitland. It's something he's done for many years, but this year is different. This year, John suddenly finds himself in the writing room of famed Victorian novelist Charles Dickens, who sets out his idea for a Christmas tale. Dickens invites John to watch rehearsals for the writing of the story, but as Dickens struggles through contentious negotiations with his amazingly independent characters, John wonders whether A Christmas Carol will ever be written. Okay, now, time travel, which might be an invention of the near future, from the vantage point at which I'm presenting this reading, the year 2023, presents many physical problems of physics, which those who seek to invent time travel will have to overcome. It has also no doubt occurred to many that when time travel is finally invented, it will present what I call procedural problems, even psychological problems, to those who will be privileged to travel back in time. The problem that John faces as he travels back in time from the 21st century to the year 1843 is that he knows so much about what will be the future life of the man with whom he's interacting, Charles Dickens. Should John challenge Dickens when Dickens proposes something that John knows cannot possibly come true? Or should he simply play along and let Dickens make plans that a person with superior knowledge knows to be futile? Whether it will be a question of simple procedure, or whether it will be a question even of morality, the use and misuse of information presents a quandary which one of the main characters of this novella, John, me, is forced to face. So let's have a look at the writing project that Dickens proposes to John in the year 1843. He proposes to write a Canadian novel, okay, with a Canadian character named John. Okay, let's go back to page 16 early on to set this up. Here it is. So John is in the writing room with Dickens. John says, I recognize you, Mr. Dickens, and your characters, but I don't know why I'm here or how I got here. And Dickens takes over. No need to explain, John. No need at all to explain. I know all about you, where you come from, and why you are here. I know more than you yourself could possibly know. Actually, I'm the one who's able to explain to you. You see, John, I created you. I'm going to make plans for you. You are an imaginary creation, one of the characters with whom I people my imaginary tales. You are an idea that has just occurred to me. Okay, then we go to page 1819 as Dickens continues this seeming explanation. Niagara Falls, of course, I was there, John. I was there. And that is where you come from, as you say. I was there on my American tour. I breathed a sigh of relief when I reached Canada, I'll have you know. The people there were so accommodating, you see. You are my first Canadian character, John. I look forward to our acquaintance. By and by, I'm sure, I'll imagine a story for you. Dickens continues on further down page 19. Not far from Niagara Falls. Well. That explains your origin, John, for me. Not far from the cataract, I assume. Canadian by birth with all that nationality entails. Of course, John, this explains the origin of the idea of you as it came to me. It was there that I was able to breathe fresh air on my travels, on my journey, on my voyage, on my tour. Oh, I have made myself a Canadian. It might seem that I have conjured you out of nothing, as people assume that I do with all my characters, but I have conjured you out of more than simply air. Okay, then on to page 20, where Dickens adds some more seeming explanation. A balanced aspect of myself, John, as all my characters are myself, but a grounded character to oversee my affairs, a Canadian, the very person that I, or a part of me at least, would like to be. A Canadian. What more down-to-earth sound could there be than the sound of that word? You are me, an aspect of me. Of course you are. You an aspect of me that I've always felt. Felt the absence of, that is. Felt as a lack. You're a calmer, more settled, more balanced, more objective, more Canadian me. So, welcome on the voyage, John. Feel free to offer advice. I'm dealing with an ocean of concerns. I have a cast of recalcitrant characters for the tale that I have on the go. Every one of them is an aspect of me. I must harpoon them one by one and gaff them into the boat. You'll be my lifeline, John, on this voyage. I shall give you a character tour. You shall keep me from going overboard in the fog. Okay, then we go to page 25, where Dickens continues, seemingly explaining. You are a character in process, John. I am working on you now. You're a character who I'm in the process of creating. Out of many bits and pieces, I assume. My visit to Canada, your nearness, as you said, to Niagara Falls, my sense of the Canadian character, borne out by the kind of person you seem to be. I've had a nagging irritant for the last couple of years. I've created you as an antidote, an operative counterforce for what I would call an occupational disease. Okay, and the last one I'll read in this, which is part 1 of Dickens and his Canadian novel, is this. I am fully aware of what is happening, John, and it is a pleasure to be able to explain it to you. You are a character who I have created for a reason, who I have conjured out of the fragments of my memories and of my needs. I need you to be a counterweight of sorts, John, a second self, a wiser older brother to me, to bolster tendencies in me which need encouragement, support. You are a door, John, a door, and also a key. So that sets up the revelation of more details of what this Canadian novel will contain. So that's kind of part 1 of this topic of Dickens's Canadian novel. More details in a future video. Here's a note about literature in general, and it carries on from a previous video. I'm trying an experiment. I'm reading the same note in 2 different video presentations, which will have exactly the same words of explanation, but which will have 2 entirely different examples from literature. So here's the second reading of the explanation. Okay. All serious literature is presented in 2 modes, so 1 and 2. Here's 1. In the surface mode of presentation, there are characters, settings, and actions. This is the mode that comes closest to the lives that you and I live through as we go about our daily lives of people, situations, decisions, and actions. Number 2, Serious literature's second mode of presentation is that of deepening imagery. In every serious work of literature, there will be the suggestion that the surface story is a vehicle for stimulating thought about two things. Let's go to A and B. A. One is to stimulate thought about the life of the person who's reading the book. B. And the other is to stimulate thought about the lives of all human beings who have ever lived on the earth in all of what we call historical eras. Of all human beings who are currently living on the earth, in all countries and all societies, and of all human beings who will ever live on the earth in future by nature of their common humanity. Now, that's the same note I read in an earlier video. But then, now I get into examples, different examples from different writers, very different writers, different centuries, but the same point about literature and how it's put together, the nuts and bolts of literature, if you will. Okay. Here's the second example of the surface mode of presentation. So the first example was Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities, a very different writer. Here's the book that I taught from as a high school teacher. It's got my name on it, covering up part of it, just so I wouldn't, I make notes in and I underline, so I didn't want to get it mixed up with one of the student copies. So The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, okay? So the same point as Dickens and A Tale of Two Cities, but an entirely different century, an entirely different writer, entirely different story, right? Here we are. And the second example of a surface mode of presentation. So, in the F. Scott Fitzgerald novel, The Great Gatsby, a group of people live through the ambience of the 1920s in New York City. Fitzgerald's story is told so vividly in terms of surface detail that it's quite easy to turn it into a movie. In the movie, we see all the characters, the settings, and the actions of the 1920s that take place in front of our eyes. Okay? And here's a second example of the mode of deepening imagery. Quote from The Great Gatsby. I became aware of the old island here that flowered once for Dutch sailors' eyes, a fresh green breast of the New World. Its vanished trees, the trees that had made way for Gatsby's house, had once pandered in whispers to the last and greatest of all human dreams. For a transitory, enchanted moment, man must have held his breath in the presence of this continent, compelled into an aesthetic contemplation he neither understood nor desired, face to face for the last time in history with something commensurate to his capacity for wonder. Now that's the quote from The Great Gatsby. It's deepening imagery. Fitzgerald is using deepening imagery to go along with his surface story. This passage is an example of what I would call deepening imagery. The fact that it was placed near the end of Fitzgerald's novel is irrelevant. The fact that deepening imagery is included somewhere between the covers of a novel means that the reader is invited to see more in the story of the novel than just the surface, characters, settings, incidents, and actions. The use of two modes of presentation, surface story and deepening imagery, is a basic staple of all poetic plays and poetic novels. It is not a basic staple of all prose plays and prose novels. Isn't it interesting, though, that the double mode of presentation is common to all genres of literature, from the epic to the poetic play to the poetic novel, and to all eras that have produced serious literature, from the time of Homer to the time of the ancient Greek playwrights to the time of Shakespeare to our own time, the 20th and 21st centuries. So, once again, this is my novella, John and Dickens, A Christmas Mystery. It's found on Amazon. There's more information there. My publisher's website is rocksmillspress.com, ROCKSMILLSPRASS.com. More information there. And on my website, johnpassfield.ca, there's two free books, the Planning Notebook and the Journal, two full books in which I think about not only this particular novella that I'm working on and have finished and I'm polishing, but all of literature and how it works, the nuts and bolts of literature, if you will. So thank you for watching this video.